Hello everyone, my name is Alma Trejo, and my daughter's gonna kill me for saying this. She's a senior at the school. So I am running for the office of District Attorney. Do you guys know what the District Attorney does? District Attorney is is probably the most powerful position in 3 counties, El Paso County, Culberson, and Hudspeth. Mi nombre es Alma Trejo y soy abogada primeramente y soy una candidata para la oficina del fiscal del distrito. The jurisdiction is all the way from Anthony, Texas, all the way to Van Horn. So that, and what the district attorney is responsible for is anytime anybody is arrested, the district attorney prosecutes those cases. And is there anybody here who wants to be a lawyer? Anybody who's even, you are? Okay. Back, many years ago, when I'm originally from Fabens, and that's where I graduated. My dad was a immigrant, a bracero, and let me explain since you guys are real young. What the bracero is that it was a program in the 50s. And there was not enough men in the United States to work the farms. So they made an agreement with Mexico. And they would allow people to come in and work. So that's the Bracero program. That's how my dad wound up in Pecos, Texas, or Pecos. I was an immigrant worker, so we moved from Pecos to Midland. I was born in Midland. Then we went to California. My brother was born. Then we came back to Pecos, and then we came back to Fabens, and that's where we stayed. I graduated from Fabens High School, and then I went to UTEP. And I actually went to UTEP wanting to be a math teacher. That's what I was planning to do. I love math, and then once I was there, I met a lawyer, and he talked to me about all these criminal cases, and it just sounded fascinating. So that's how I wound up in law school. I didn't even know what a lawyer was. I had never even met a lawyer. I didn't even know what lawyers look like. Suggested that I go to law school. My first answer was, well, first of all, I'm not rich, so I can't go. So that's another thing. Don't worry. If you don't have the money, there's a lot of programs. And after UTEP, I went to Texas Tech, and that's in Lubbock, and that's where I graduated from. And then I became a district attorney. When you're a district attorney, you handle all these cases. I handled murders, rapes, capital murders, possession of marijuanas. I prosecuted, I think the youngest person I prosecuted was 14 years old, and he had committed an act sexual assault of a child, so we certified him as an adult. He was literally 15 years old when we tried him as an adult. We convicted him, and he didn't even last 1 year in TDC. He was killed in prison within a year. Unfortunately, I mean, sometimes there's offenses that kids do, and you just have to be punished by an adult. If you want to do adult things, then sometimes you're just going to be punished as an adult. I've tried a lot of fascinating cases. The death penalty case that I tried involved the Mexican Mafia prison gang, and one of the members was killed, and that's the offense that I tried, death penalty. So being a lawyer, being a prosecutor is really fun. Even if you're not thinking about it, I mean, that's something worth exploring.
What were some of the unexpected challenges that you faced while becoming a lawyer? Okay.
When I went to Texas Tech, I went to Lubbock in '88. You would think that by '88, there'd be no discrimination, there'd be no racial harassment, but you would be wrong. I can tell you there was, out of about 300 students, there was first year, second years, and third years, maybe 8 of us were minority members, and we were harassed. We were left ugly notes in our lockers, such as, go back to Mexico, you enchiladas, you tacos, you, I don't know, they didn't say flautas, but probably because they didn't know flautas, but it was really bad. And it was very competitive, not just the racial stuff, but it was very competitive. The first thing that they told us in class was, look to your right, look to your left, only one of you is gonna graduate. So that's the mentality that Texas Tech fostered. So back then we didn't have computers or anything. We literally had to go to the library and go get books, and from there do your homework. So anytime they would assign something, the first people that would get there, they'd tear out the pages. So you'd go to the book, guess what? You can't do your assignment. So things were really bad back then, but those were the challenges back then. And that was in the late 80s, early 90s. So I'm hoping Texas Tech changed. I really do. I know that when I went there, I was, I guess, lucky enough to have gotten a scholarship. I didn't know what the reason for that scholarship. Texas Tech had engaged in discriminatory practices. They weren't letting minorities in, so they were sued. Part of the settlement was that they had to establish 2 full scholarships for minority colleges. So UTEP had 2, Pan Am, the Valley, Houston, all the minority schools had 2. So since there was only 2 of us from UTEP, I mean, we benefited. We got free tuition, free books. We survived, we became lawyers, and one of the things that you need to realize once you go to college, everybody else is also used to A's. So I mean, that's when you get your first C's, your first D's. One of the sayings we had was D as in diploma. So I mean, we just had to pass our classes, and then after that, we took the bar. Our test was 2 days and a half. By the 3rd day, you're just like, you know what, I don't even care anymore. But so that's the bar. Being a lawyer, it takes 3 years. It doesn't matter what degree you get at undergraduate. And I would recommend some type of English, because you have to be a great writer. That's what separates the A's from the C's and the D's. Yes?
What classes would you need to take to be a lawyer?
Anything. I would suggest, now if I had to go back and do it again, I would suggest some type of business. Not necessarily maybe business, but at least take some business classes, because a lot of the mistakes that the lawyers make is they're great lawyers, but they can't run an office. But make sure you take some business classes, maybe marketing, accounting, just something to give you a basic understanding of business.
How was becoming a judge?
Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot that part. I was a district attorney for about 10 years. I was a supervisor, and then after that, 2 county courts became open. They were created, so I decided to run. So I ran for one of the courts. That was in 2002 is when we ran. I was elected in 2002, and then after that I was elected 6 terms. I didn't have an opponent, and then last year in 2023, in order for me to run for district attorney, I had to resign my bench. I heard misdemeanors, which are DWIs and family violence. Possession of marijuana, failure IDs, criminal trespass. That's what I did for 21 years.
Can you explain the difference of a judge to district attorney, like the different?
Okay. With the judge is like an umpire. What you do is you hear both sides, and then you make sure that the rules are being adhered to. If there's objections, you rule on it, and that's what a judge does. A judge doesn't get involved in either case. You just kind of sit there and you make sure that the rules and that the evidence that can come in will come in. As a district attorney, you're representing the state. You represent everybody in Texas, and you're the ones who prosecute the case. And you're the ones that are there basically asking that somebody be convicted and that they be sentenced. And as a DA, it's not just winning cases. There's some cases that should be dismissed. There's some cases that need to be pled. And then there's some cases that need to go to trial. The DA is also responsible for creating like diversion programs to make sure that kids don't get criminal records so soon. For example, there's some first offender programs that if you do those, then they can dismiss your charges. And one of the things I want to do is also create other diversion programs, because the last thing you need, honestly, is a conviction. As silly as it sounds, it's like, oh, it's just possession of marijuana, or oh, it's just theft. Guess what? No one's going to hire you. No one's going to want a thief, and no one's going to want a drug addict. The law, 17 under the law of Texas makes you an adult. So even if you're not done with high school, you're 17 and you commit a felony or a misdemeanor, and if you go to jail, you go to adult jail. Juvie is no longer an option.
Hi, I wanted to know if you do with district attorney, what changes or what future do you see for what's happening with the Walmart shooter case?
Well, first of all, and that's the first question everybody asks me. Everywhere I go, every door I go to is like, all right, what are you going to do about the Walmart case? First of all, everybody knows about the Walmart case, right? Todos saben del caso de Walmart. Ahorita están, el castigo que quieren recibir es mortal, pena mortal. Unfortunately, in that case, it's complicated because normally cases are either filed in the state courts or in the federal courts. This one was filed in both. So with the feds, this defendant already pled guilty to 90 life sentences. And they're going to send him to Supermax. And it's the worst prison that we have. Chapo's there, the Unabomber was there, Timothy McVeigh, the worst of the worst is there at Supermax. And so he's already been sentenced to that. The only reason he can't go over there is because we have him on state charges. All I can tell you is come January 1st, I would sit down with these lawyers and figure out what the heck is going on and how quick can we fix it, because we need to try this case. In order to try this case in El Paso, we need to find about 500 people that can say, I don't know if he's guilty. I need to sit and listen to the evidence and then make up my mind. This case is probably going to be tried out of town. And hopefully they can find 500 people there, because I think everybody in the U.S. pretty much knows about this case.
What did you want to become a district attorney?
Well, because the thing is, I wasn't planning to run. I had a very nice, comfortable job being a judge. You won't believe how amazing it is to be a judge. It's a great job. So the reason I decided to run is because in 2020, we had somebody that was elected that didn't have the experience she needed. So she was removed, and I had always been wanting to run for DA, but the timing was never right because of my daughter. Now she's a senior, now she can drive on her own, and so I can now do everything that I needed to do. Before then, I couldn't. But the reason I decided to run is because I have the qualifications, and let's give it a shot.
Well, there's been an increase a lot in DWIs and DUIs in general. So what would your office do regarding harsher penalties for intoxicated driving?
Right now, with DWIs and with any other offense, if this is your first time, then, and if you meet certain qualifications, you can go to that first offenders program. So that's there. What I would do different is if you come back the second time, if you didn't learn your lesson the first time, then now you're going to do jail time. The first time is going to be probation, as long as you didn't hurt anybody, you didn't kill anybody, you didn't cause property damage. The second time is going to be jail. And that's something that we don't do right now, right? And then unfortunately, when people get called to jury service, I know people always complain, okay, why don't they do something about it and this and that? Once you put people on the jury, guess what they do? Give probation. So even though they've killed people, right now it's really hard to get prison time on people that kill other people while drunk. It's very hard. Juries are very forgiving. We would give recommendations of jail time for second and above. And then the other thing is, We would also, what we would do different is make sure that if you do plead guilty to a DWI, that you have that ignition interlock device. And it's this thing that they put on your car, and you have to blow into it before you start it. If there's any alcohol in your breath, the car doesn't start. But DWI is a big, big problem. That's why, I honestly, after 10 o'clock, I'm afraid to be on the roads. That's how bad it is. Yes?
I heard that before, and I also heard that you said they're trying to do a program that way people don't have to go to Lava like you to get the degree. Do you know anything about that? If UTEP is going to adopt a program for lawyers?
The president, Wilson, was there, and what she was saying is that they're conducting a study to make sure that there's a demand for it, that they're not just going to build a school and then nobody comes to it, and that there's a job market. Not only will these people graduate, but are they going to be able to find a job? Hoping, and I can tell you I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure there's a law school here, because I think a lot of people would benefit because they can't leave town. It wouldn't be Texas Tech, it would be UTEP. She said she wants to make sure that it's UTEP. You guys need to make sure that you change the laws, because that's the only way things are going to change. At some point, you guys it's going to be all up to you. We're going to sit back and watch, and then it's up to you guys to keep us safe.
What laws would you support for gun control in Texas and the county?
The type of laws I would support, honestly, we don't need military weapons. You don't need them for self-defense, and if you need them to go hunting, you know what, then there's something wrong with you. So that I would support. It's like, we don't need automatic weapons. Obviously, we do need guns for self-defense and people buying guns. What I would support is maybe like a 3-day waiting period where you go, make an application, and then for them to run a history to make sure that you've never been in a mental hospital, that you've never been kicked out of the military for mental illness, or that you don't have a protective order, that you haven't been stalking people, or that you don't have a criminal record. And then if you pass all that, then I would really support something like making sure that you go get training and a license. If we need a license to drive a car, then we should have a license with education in order to own a weapon. Okay. And
would you increase to have guns to the same age as alcohol?
21 would be a good age. No offense, but you guys don't need to be carrying weapons. Your brain has not matured, and I know you think you know it all, because I live with somebody who knows it all, but trust me, you don't even know 10% of what you're gonna learn in life. So 21, if you can't drink till 21, then you shouldn't have a gun until you're 21. Not everybody that is arrested is guilty, so you can't have the mentality of, he was arrested, he must be guilty. No, there's some cases that, honestly, I didn't even believe the victim. I was just like, I know it didn't happen. I had a girl who said she was raped 3 times, and by different people, and different circumstances, and I was like, once I saw her and I talked to her, I was like, you know what, you better tell me the truth at this point. So she basically fessed up that she had made up some of these allegations. So you need to be firm. You need to tell the victims, hey, you need to tell me everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't care if you were doing cocaine. I don't care if you were drunk. I don't care what you were wearing. You need to tell me everything, because I need to be aware of the case. I've had very graphic cases. Because I was head of the rape and child abuse unit. So that's the history that I have. I did a lot of murder cases, a lot of sexual assault cases. I did about 80 trials, and like I told you, the death penalty case. Being a lawyer is fun. Even if you've never thought about it, It's not just oh, I'm not smart enough. Trust me, I'm not that smart. You can do it. One of the things that I always tell people is, when I was at UTEP, I graduated, and then I took you have to take the law school admittance test in order to go to law school. Well, I didn't know anything about it. We didn't have counselors. So I just went in cold. I literally took this test cold. Well, obviously I didn't do well. So the first year, I didn't get accepted into any law school because I didn't know enough about studying for the LSAT. So I had two choices. Either I give up that dream and move on, or I prepare for it. So I went and bought a study guide, and I was a waitress at that time. I waitressed in Fabens, and then I kept working, and then every day I would do about 2 to 3 hours of study. So the next time I took the LSAT, I kicked its butt. So I was like, so even if you fail, it doesn't matter. What's important is what you do when you get up. And that's the important thing. So don't get frustrated, or the other thing is like, oh, well, my grades weren't good in high school. You know what? Some people do best in college or trade school, and high school just wasn't their thing. So don't let high school define you. High school, you're gonna find out soon enough, was just a phase, just something you went through.
So you had talked about being head of the rape unit and all that stuff. Knowing that, how will you prioritize cases as DA?
Okay. The first thing I would do is run reports and separate, like, the important case, the ones where there's where somebody was victimized, and then there's also cases where what I call low risk. Failure ID, things like that. I would get rid of all those cases so that we could concentrate and attack the backlog, because there's a backlog right now. So that way we can start trying all the cases in which somebody was hurt.
And we know that you're a part of bar associations. Can you tell us a little bit about the priorities or goals of these associations? Okay.
I belong to the El Paso Bar and all the attorneys, pretty much the state bar. And their priorities, like anybody else, is to make sure that we have somebody in office who's qualified and who can lead these offices, because it's not just the criminal section. It affects everybody, including all the other attorneys that maybe do some other type of law. We all live here, and we all want to save community.
Okay. And you were interviewed in February by the El Paso Times, if you remember, and you talked about an attorney shortage.
Yes.
At the DA's office?
Yes.
So is this still an issue now?
Yes. What happened was, unfortunately, COVID didn't help matters either. So during the COVID, and I'm sure you all remember, especially the ones that were seniors, you were freshmen back then, or 8th graders? And what happened was, in March of 2020 is when we were told we couldn't try cases anymore. So we all switched to Zoom. So nobody could come to the courthouse. Everything was done by Zoom. If people wanted to plead guilty, they'd go to this location, and they would plead guilty from there, and we would be on camera, and everybody else would be on camera. So that took about a year and a half. So there was no cases being tried in a year and a half. So the backlog started at that point. Then the other DA, there was another DA that was elected in 2020, came in and fired half of the people. So then there was even less work being done. And then she was removed, and then the new DA, he hasn't been able to keep people. About 32 lawyers have left since he took office. So there's several courts that don't have prosecutors. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but that's pretty dangerous. So that's where we are right now, and I would make it a priority to hire and think outside the box. Maybe some people don't want to work full-time, but they will work part-time. The other thing is, I've talked to civil firms, which are the ones that do the civil cases, and I've asked them that maybe some of their associates could come and volunteer to try a murder. That way they get experience and they get the pro bono hours, and then we get free labor. Because right now there's 85 murders that haven't been tried and 35 capital murders. You have people that have been in jail for about 5 years to 6 years, and there's a backlog. And the newspaper hasn't reported it, but honestly, it's pretty critical. I'm thinking within a couple of months, something bad's gonna start happening.
Okay, and what initiatives will you take to better the environment at the DA's office and make a better work environment for the attorneys?
Right now, there's 5 generations in the workforce. So as a manager, all you future managers, you need to know how to supervise and what motivates each generation. What motivates the baby boomers like me is completely different from what motivates you guys. The younger lawyers, they're not willing to come into an office 8 to 5 anymore. They want to work remote a few days. They prioritize family, happiness over work. And as a manager, you need to know that. And you need to be able to meet the employee where they're at. And I think that's been the downfall of many companies and organizations, that they're like, well, no, in the old days, this is the way it was. You show up 8 to 5. And now that doesn't work anymore. So people are leaving. They have choices. They can go to another organization that will allow them to work remotely. So you pretty much have to grow with the times.
Okay, and you've been in this field for 31 years, right? How have you managed to make these cases not affect you?
Trust me, they affect you, even 32 years later. And that's just something, honestly, one of the things I would do, and it's something I didn't do, I should have gone to therapy. Once I got placed in the rape and child abuse unit, honestly, I should have gone to therapy. I'm too old now to go to therapy, no, I'm joking. Chances are I will at some point. But I think I would offer some type of, not just therapy or counseling or just mental health days, anything, because you know what? These cases are hard. They're graphic. You deal with, seeing dead people, dead bodies, and sometimes bloody, and autopsies. I had to go to an autopsy of a child who choked on, I don't know if you guys are too young, but those caterpillars, that it used to be a toy made out of hard plastic, and it was these caterpillars that babies used to have all the time. Well, the parents were asleep, they fell asleep, and then he choked on one of those pieces. So I went to the autopsy. Oh my God. Those are things that'll just stay with you. That's why mental health, that's one of my priorities, is to create a mental health unit and make sure that the employees and the victims take advantage of it, because otherwise it stays with you.
And as prosecutor, you talked about a moment where you were under risk of being attacked. Has this happened before that moment, and how have you managed to, stay calm during these experiences?
That time what was his name? Larry James Harper. Larry James Harper escaped. I'm not going to lie to you. I was scared. I didn't stay in my house. I went and stayed with some friends. But the other times, you're basically in the courtroom with the person that you're prosecuting, and they're less than 10 feet away. So that's just something that's going to happen. For example, the Mexican Mafia defendant that we had, he was literally like from here to there, and it was every single day for about 6 months. We're lucky here in El Paso, nothing has happened, but they could easily just, what I call shank you, with a knife or with whatever they have. But those experiences, I think, have made me more vigilant, and I'm constantly, I don't sit with my back against the door. So things like that, you start, you kind of just change your life and make sure that you kind of scan everybody and be able to describe what they're wearing in case anything happens. So things like that.
And tell us a little bit about your goals and things you want to prioritize as a DA.
Okay. As a DA, obviously, I want to fill the vacancies, because without people, we can't try those cases. I want to try those murders and capital murders and sex cases as soon as possible, because they're just getting older and older, and that only benefits the defense. It never benefits the state. And the other thing I want to start implementing is I want diversion programs. I know vaping is a big problem right now. I don't want to criminalize people that vape. I mean, I'm not saying it's a good thing, trust me, no. But you don't need that on your record. You don't need to start off with a conviction. Because even if you're not going to go to college, and some people's like, oh, well, I'm not worried, I'm not going to college. If you're not a U.S. citizen, if you live in housing, if you're applying for any type of financial aid, all that will affect you. And the other thing, I know this is kind of not part of the question, but be careful what you put on social media. When you're out there trying to get a job, guess what? The first thing they're going to do, they're going to Google you. And if you're out there vomiting on a toilet and God only knows what else, that's what they're going to see. And those pictures never go away.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That's all the questions I have for you today.
All righty.
And
Thank
for being
you.
here.
Thank you.